good morning. It is Question Friday once again, and today's Question Friday is going to be kind of a very specific video. I think Question Friday has kind of been like a random jumping around kind of video for a while, but today we're going to do something a little bit more specific. I'm going to talk to you guys about Airbnb because I mentioned Airbnb in my last video when we were putting this, you can't really see it from here, but over there you can kind of see it. The chair rail up in this room that we were doing those renovations to try to book a few more guests on Airbnb. And then I had a lot of really lovely responses from you guys about if you're interested in staying or what's it like to do Airbnb in Paris. So that's going to be the theme of today's video. And to kick that off, I'm just going to do a mini little baby announcement. Which is that the Airbnb listing for this apartment has been totally redone and is now live on the Airbnb site. There's a link in the description of this video. So if you guys are interested in seeing how it all turned out, or how it looks on the video versus how it looks on the listing, or if you're interested in staying here, because it would be quite cool to have some of you guys, some of our community come and stay here. Click on the link. If you could click the little heart on the listing and favorite it. Apparently that helps a lot with the Airbnb algorithm and promoting it to more people, as we all have to think about those things in this day and age all the time. So if you feel so inclined to click that little heart, that would be helpful as well. Anyway, watch the rest of this video and then check out the Airbnb link to see the finished product. I've been doing Airbnb in Paris for about 2.5 years. I started doing it just after COVID when I bought Everdeen in 2021. Obviously, that freed me up a lot to do Airbnb here, because if I have guests here in this apartment, I can go down to Everdeen. It works out really well. It's a nice system, and the money that I make here pays for the mortgage and for a lot of the work at Everdeen. So that is very useful. I say Airbnb in this video, by the way, it just is, I'm referring to my experience, my personal experience with Airbnb. I think it's probably quite similar to if you use other short-term renting websites. I know there's a lot of different ones on the market now. I've only used Airbnb, so that's what I'm going to talk about, but I think it's quite similar if you're using other ones. In Paris, using Airbnb is a little bit different than other places. The biggest difference is that you have a limited number of days that you can rent on Airbnb, which is really, I think it can be slightly frustrating if you're someone like me who's just trying to rent out their home. But I actually think it's a really good rule, because that stops people from buying properties solely for Airbnb. I know in New York and in a lot of other major cities, there have been huge problems with people just buying up apartments to use them as full-time Airbnbs, almost like a hotel, and then property values just shooting up, and it being really difficult for people who want to actually live in the city to buy something or rent something because it's so expensive. So I think it's a really good rule. In Paris, we have 120 days you can rent out your apartment on Airbnb. After 120 days in a 1-year period, you are done for the year. You cannot do more than that. I understand it. I think it's a good idea. Sometimes it would be nice to rent out a bit more than 120 days, but 120 days is actually really a lot. Another unusual thing in Paris is just the number of apartments. There are so many apartments for renting on Airbnb that you really do have to think more in terms of, how do I stand out? For this apartment, I've really tried to make it look cute and stylish in a kind of a vintage style, so that people are kind of looking for that Parisian vibe, would be interested in it. Also, it's in quite a good location. It's in a very central location. It's next to a metro and several buses, so that's helpful as well. And although it is not the largest apartment in terms of actual square meters, it's separated into bedroom and living room, and then small kitchen, small bathroom. So it does actually feel a lot bigger than it is. So all those things I've kind of really tried to put forward. I think when you're doing Airbnb in a big city where there's a lot of competition, you have to really think about making yourself stand out. So that's something that I've really tried to focus on, especially with these renovations. Now we've got kind of a unusual, but I think really pretty color that kind of pops out for the photos, maybe catches someone's eye. But it's quite a fun thing to think about. It's almost like marketing. It kind of encourages you also to make your living space as beautiful as possible, because I do live here. I do live here whenever I'm in Paris, which is a fair amount of my life. And also, I do plan to continue living here as well. This is never going to be a full-time Airbnb. This is always going to be my personal home for when I'm in Paris. And I own this apartment. There's another video talking about how I bought this apartment. I'll link that. I'm going to guess it's going to be there. I'm not that good with doing the links and where they're going to be on the screen. But there's another video explaining how I bought this apartment and the whole story. So you can click on that if you're interested in that. I mean, I plan to keep this apartment forever. I really love it. Now, going more into the side of being the person who rents out an Airbnb, there are some things that I think everyone just kind of has to learn for themselves, or maybe learn from a friend who's already doing Airbnb or something similar. When you get started, it's kind of a hit and miss process, because there are some little tips and tricks that make a big difference with your experience. For example, when I started renting out my Airbnb, I started by putting it up for 4 people. Which is kind of as many people as you could comfortably fit in this apartment. And I won't say that I had problems, but I had some very interesting guests. And I talked to a friend of mine who also did Airbnb on a much smaller apartment than this. She had a studio apartment that she was renting out. And she told me, don't put the maximum number of people that can fit in the apartment on the listing. And I was like, oh, why is that? She's like, well, in general, if you have guests who, fair enough, like Paris is expensive and it's difficult to find a cheap place to stay. But if you have guests that are trying to like cram as many people as possible into the smallest space possible, quite often they're people like students who are coming to party on a budget. And if you cut it down to 1 or 2 people less than like the maximum number of people you could fit in here, people will be more satisfied, because when they arrive, they will have more than the minimum amount of space. And also you'll kind of lose the element of those who are trying to like milk it for everything it's worth. So I did that, made a huge difference, really good tip. To, technically this place can sleep 4 people. There's a big double bed, there's a big sofa bed, which we'll get to in a minute, because there's been drama with the sofa bed. Drama. Another great tip was to really look at the profiles of people who ask for the Airbnb. This is a bit controversial, because some people think that you'll do much better on Airbnb if you put the automatic, where you accept the booking automatically. And while probably you do book more people that way, I think it's important to be able to look at the people and just make sure that, they seem cool, they seem, they maybe have a good review or 2, they've been on Airbnb for more than 5 minutes. I've heard rumors that sometimes people who have had lots of bad reviews from leaving apartments messy or breaking things start up a new account, and therefore if you get someone who's just started an account, it could be someone who has had a bad track record in the past. So I'm a little bit wary when I see someone who's just opened their account and who has 0 reviews and 0 information about them. Another tip that friends told me was to book people well in advance if possible, because not only does that give you some like time to plan out your life of, okay, I'm leaving this day, I have to meet them to give them the keys on this day, I have to do this. It also means that people who are booking in advance are maybe like a little more organized and a little bit more communicative with planning things, and it's maybe just a little bit nicer. I know that we all end up traveling or doing things last minute sometime through necessity, but generally when I've had people that booked pretty far in advance, they've been really lovely and really well organized and really easy to have as guests. So that's very nice. But back to the sofa bed. As you would, I would hope that most adult humans who have been on this planet for 20, 30, 40 years and managed to survive that long would possibly work out that if there's a large sofa in a living room and the Airbnb listing says 2 beds, maybe the sofa opens up into a sofa bed. It's not a mystery, I would hope. Also, if you have my number and are maybe wondering if one person is supposed to sleep on the sofa, maybe when you've already messaged me for other things, you could also ask about the sofa instead of possibly, theoretically, in a theoretical situation, sleeping on the sofa in a not folded out bed situation, just a sofa plain as is, and then leaving a negative review that said there was no other bed. And it is mysterious to me because it does say very clearly on the listing, sofa bed. In the new listing, we have taken photos of the bed of the sofa folded out. So maybe that will help people figure it out. I'm debating if I should just put a sign that says, this is a sofa bed, or if that's a bit condescending. But this was not even the most interesting guest. The most interesting guest, and I'm not going to tell too many like stories out of school here, but this one story I do need to tell you guys because I think it's the most epic of the Airbnb stories. So Laurent and I, random tangent. Laurent, my boyfriend, if you're new to this channel, has a van that he has like done out the back as camping, which is very cool, and we really love using it in the summer and like going and doing like little 1 or 2 night campings and staying in the back of the van. It's quite fun. It's really fun. Maybe at some point, I think in the Loire Valley video, you can see the van. I think I showed you guys a bit of the van, but maybe at some point I'll do like a bigger tour of the inside of the van because Laurent did it all by hand. And it's really amazing. Anyway, we're staying in the van. At 5 a.m., I kind of wake up halfway and I grab my phone, I put it next to my face so that I'll hear my alarm when it goes off later. And I just happen to look at my phone screen and I see that I've missed like 10 calls on my phone. A little bit of backstory. The night before, there was a new Airbnb group that was supposed to be checking in at like 11 o'clock. Because it was so late, I had left the key in a special lockbox that I have for them. And I just assumed that everything had gone fine because I hadn't heard anything by the time we went to bed around midnight. Cut to 5 a.m. I panic. I call them back and I'm like, is everything okay? What's happening? They don't speak any English at all. They also don't speak French. They speak Spanish. I do not speak Spanish. I vaguely understand like a few words of Spanish, but I do not speak Spanish in any form. It's 5 a.m. Laurent's kind of like groggily being like, what's happening? And I'm trying to speak to these people in Spanish because they're trying to tell me, I keep saying, are you in the building? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, do you have the key? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, use the key to go in the apartment. And they're like, no. And I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. So Laurent reaches over and says, hey, I can talk to them a bit in Spanish. And I'm like, I knew that he knew a bit of Spanish and I hadn't heard him speak it before, but I was a bit like, oh, okay, you can try. Fluent Spanish erupts from it, like the most fluent stream of Spanish. Like his English is excellent. If you've seen him on this channel, you know how good his English is. Apparently his Spanish is even better. It was very shocking when it's 5 a.m. and you're in the back of a van and suddenly your partner speaks fluent Spanish that you had no idea about. So he starts talking to these people on the phone. Apparently, what had happened was they got a taxi from the airport to my address. The taxi, we assume, because we don't know for sure about this part, we assume must have dropped them off in front of the building next door because there was maybe a truck or someone parked in front of this building or something blocking the taxi. So the people get out of the taxi, go directly into the building that's at the closest possible building to the taxi without looking at the street number. Meanwhile, they have, they're here for Disney, so they've got like a bunch of suitcases and stuff to bring back Disney souvenirs. They knock on the door. They try to use the code that I give them to get in the door. They don't go in the door because obviously it's the wrong building, so the code doesn't work. Eventually someone comes out the door. They go in the door behind the person who's come out, even though the code didn't work, and still without checking the building number. And then they wait in the lobby of the building trying to find the lockbox for the key that I've left for them, which obviously they can't find because it's the wrong building. And instead of going out and checking the building number, they spent 5 hours in the lobby of this building and slept there on top of their suitcases, which kind of breaks my heart because I feel so guilty and bad that like that's how their vacation started, but also mystifies me because I hope that most people maybe would have gone outside to check the building number when like the code didn't work or when you couldn't find the key or anything. They also called Airbnb before me. that I called the Airbnb customer service. You must get hundreds of calls of this nature, and didn't say, can you check which building you're in? But kept trying to call me as well, which obviously I didn't hear because I was sleeping real hard. This is such a mystifying story to me. And it's one that, like, I feel like it would be really funny if I wasn't like a bit guilt-ridden that they started their vacation like this. But this can be the kind of a fun experience you can have with Airbnb also. To be fair, after they got in the apartment, they were really lovely guests. They were very nice. They left it in great condition. They were very easy to work with after this. It was just the initial entry that was really problematic. Anyway, that is some of my Airbnb experience. In general, I think it's a really great resource if you're looking to make a little extra money and you happen to have a home that works with the Airbnb situation. You know, it's working out pretty good so far. The one small downside is that Airbnb has shuffled me to the bottom of the pile, hence the redecoration, the new photos. We're trying to bump up the listing to get me back where I will be seen by a few more people again. So, well, like I said before, if you're interested, then check out the link that's in the description here, and you can see a little bit more about my Airbnb listing and how it works. I hope this has been interesting in some fashion. If you guys are interested, I can also do another video about like the other side of it, like choosing an Airbnb in Paris and what areas and like that kind of thing, if that's something you guys would be interested in. I think that's pretty much it. I now have to go to Switzerland for the last time. It's my last weekend of the contract in Switzerland. I'm quite sad, but I've got to go and get to the train station and get on that train. So I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna remind you guys quickly to please do subscribe, because it is extremely helpful. If you subscribe to this channel, it'll keep you up to date with videos. It'll help with the YouTube algorithm, promoting the channel a bit more. And also liking this video would be pretty great too, if you guys feel so inclined. So with that, I will see you guys next time.